Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Welcome to Verbal Beginnings ABA Exploration Series. I'm Emily. I'm the clinical director here of Field Services at Verbal Beginnings. Verbal Beginnings' mission is to change lives for both our clients and our families and for our professionals. We do that through our pledge of care, which is our promise to you, to provide effective treatment through compassionate care. And we also strive to achieve our mission through our core values. One of our core values is education. So we take opportunities to teach families valuable ways to work with your child. And that is really why we decided to start this series to begin with. We are also, if you notice on the slide here, you'll see that seal down below. That is from the Behavioral Health Center of Excellence. We're very proud of this seal as it represents the hard work and focus that we place to ensure that Verbal Beginnings is providing quality care through the highest of standards. And we continue to receive this accreditation each year, and we strive to do better each time we go through the accreditation process. You can move to the next slide, please, Barbara. Okay, so if you are new to Verbal Beginnings, I wanted to take this opportunity to let you know about the amazing services that we offer. You'll see here on the slide each of the different types of programming that we offer here at Verbal Beginnings. So in addition to providing center-based and home-based ABA therapy, we also provide social skills programming through our Social Beginnings program, diagnostic testing through our New Beginnings program, and feeding therapy here through Healthy Beginnings, all through Verbal Beginnings, which is really exciting. And if you do have questions about any of our services or our therapies, please don't hesitate to reach out. Additionally, throughout the presentation, please feel free to add in any questions that you might have into the chat box, or you're welcome to unmute yourself as we go through when there's opportunities for questions. We'll also have time at the end of this presentation for Q&A with our wonderful presenters. And we also have live closed captioning available for this presentation. So if you're interested in the closed captioning option, please go to the bottom part of your screen where it says more. If you navigate there, there is a closed captioning button that you can click on, and it should provide a live transcript for you to follow along with us tonight. And then on the next slide here, I'm actually going to be launching a poll. We are going to launch a few polls throughout this presentation, so we really encourage you to please participate with us. The hope behind this is that we get to know our audience a bit and help cater our conversation this evening to you as our audience. So I'm going to launch that poll over to you real quickly. Give me 1 second while I do that. All righty. We're going to relaunch that. So once that pops up on your screen, please feel free to add in how old your child is. And I'll have this up for about a minute or so before I close out once I see several people participate, and then we'll get a chance to review the results. And if you're just joining us, we just launched a poll to get to know our audience, asking how old your child is. So you could please click the button to let us know. Okay. All right, I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results for you. 1 second. All righty, so here are the results of the first question we have, which is how old is your child or your children? It looks like the majority have kiddos between the ages of 3 through 5. A few that are between 6 and 9, as well as 10 through 13. So that's awesome. We have a nice range of different ages here to talk about. Thank you so much for participating. I'm going to stop sharing that really quickly. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce or allow our presenters this evening to introduce themselves. We're so excited to have them, and please enjoy the presentation this evening.
Thanks, Emily. So hi, I'm Barbara. And I'll just quickly introduce myself, and then I'll turn it over to my sister and co-author to introduce herself. So I'm Barbara. I have a PhD in applied behavior analysis that I earned 23 years ago, which is a long time ago. And I've been applying a behavior analysis mainly to organizational settings with adults, but it's the same science. So I'm very well versed in the science of ABA. And I've also had a lot of clients through the years who are behavioral health organizations like Verbal Beginnings. So I have a lot of familiarity with this industry and this population as well. So I'll let Liz go ahead and tell you a little bit about herself before we start talking about our book specifically.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Scarpolino. I go by Liz. My son Andrew is 11, and through our journey, I'm always picking my sister Barbara's brain. I feel very fortunate to have a sister who has all the years of education that she has, and she's helped me think of some very unique tactics along the way that have really benefited me. And so we wrote this book when I came into a problem that wasn't meeting our needs. Andrew just wasn't interested in the printout copy stapled at the corner. And my mom had passed and we were going to have to get on a plane, and I didn't know how to prepare him. And we were brainstorming and realized there were very little books that I could find that he would like to cuddle up with me and actually be drawn into. So that's when we came up with this idea, and I hope it benefits you as well.
So we have a couple more poll questions that we want to launch to try to kind of understand your familiarity with social stories and this sort of thing. So the first one is just, have you used social stories like our books that we'll talk to you about in a moment? Have you used anything like this with your child? Whether it's something like Liz was just talking about, that's a story printed out with the staple in the corner, or online, or anything at all. So we'll give you a moment to think about that and answer a question.
And don't be afraid to bring in like a Bubble Guppies episode, because I've used those as social stories too. Daniel Tiger, we use social stories in way more ways than we realize. And that's actually what I ended up doing with the airplane situation, is we watched the Bubble Guppies Gup Gup and Away episode. So everything that we use as tools is a social story.
Okay, so about half and half. So interesting. That's really interesting. So we'll give you a little more, for those of you who haven't used social stories, we'll give you a little more background about what we mean by that and what the social stories are like and that sort of thing. So for those of you, if you answered no, you don't have to answer this next question because it's obviously not relevant to you. But if you have used social stories, if you could let us know how helpful they've been. So from very helpful to not helpful. So we're just curious about your experiences with the stories that you have used. Okay, so helpful or some helpful. So that's good to know. We think that they're helpful as well, but we were just curious about your ideas and impressions of what you've done before. So, and as Emily mentioned, we want this to be a chat. So please put your notes in the chat. If you see that chat button at the bottom of your screen, Emily will keep track of those as we talk. So, and I'll pause a few times to ask what the questions were so that we can make sure that we're addressing those, or comments or stories or anything that you want to tell us. Or we don't have a huge group here, so you're welcome to come off of audio and just talk to us if you would like to. That's perfectly great. We'd love to hear from you. So we'll just kind of go through, our plan today is to talk through why we wrote the books, kind of our process, some of the tactical things and challenges we came across, and then we'll talk specifically about each of the 5 books that we wrote and why we wrote them and what they're about and that sort of thing as well. So I'll let Liz, she already told you a little bit about this when she was introducing herself, but I'll let her go ahead and tell you a little bit more about why we wrote this book series.
So I started to tell you in my introduction, my son was 6 when my mother passed away, and we live in Florida, and my mother wanted to be buried in Michigan. So I started kind of having a panic attack about how I was going to fly. And to be honest with you, I don't think I was having as much of a panic attack as my husband was, but that's debatable. And so we we're talking about how we would get him on the plane. I, of course, went to his OT and we thought of ideas, and she gave me little gadgets for him to use. But they're all noisy, and I didn't know how I was going to handle it. And so eventually I was talking to Barbara, because Barbara's kind of my go-to person on when I'm at a loss on how to deal with it. And she suggested social stories right about the time. So I went to his teacher and brought it up to her, and she sent home a really nice packet, stapled in the corner, black and white, printed out. I mean, that's what resources she had. And so I thought I had it made, and I sat him down, and he was not interested at all. Like, I could not get him to sit with me and cuddle and read it, and which was odd for Andrew because he loves to read. And I was talking to Barbara about that, and we were Googling, kind of looking for books that I could read to him that were the stories, and there was really nothing out there that I could cuddle with him in a bed and basically fool him that we were reading a book. And so I eventually went to a Bubble Guppies episode called Gup Guppin' Away. And I'm advertising Bubble Guppies, so they owe me. But we ended up watching a cartoon about riding in a plane, and I think it did help. But that was kind of where the idea was born. And at the time, he was having a hard time with going into the refrigerator section of the grocery store. I mean, this kid white knuckles it when you go towards the grocery store. He's very sensory, and the sound of refrigerators is very hard for him. And so the shopping one was the first one we did, because I had already obviously flown. That was pretty emergency. But and so that's
and just to chime in, I was really surprised when Liz mentioned to me that she couldn't find any books that were written for kids with autism, about kids with autism. I thought there has to be, so many kids have autism. There has to be books out there. So I almost didn't believe her, but then I Googled it myself, and we Googled it together, like she said. And sure enough, we could not find anything that would meet the needs that Liz was looking for and that Andrew would like. So our process was obviously starting with Andrew as the main character. So this is an artist rendition of Andrew. It looks a lot like him. And so he's the main character in our stories. And we started by brainstorming a long list of topics. So we had the airplane travel, like Liz mentioned, because of the travel situation that she'd recently encountered, shopping because of the grocery store kind of issues that he had in terms of all of the sights and sounds and senses that he experienced at the grocery store, and he was resistant to it. We also talked about things like holidays and family coming to visit, changing plans, doctor visits. We know that that's, a lot of people, even adults, have issues with doctor visits. So we thought that one would be really important and relevant to a lot of people, and various skills such as brushing teeth. So these are a lot of the topics that we ended up landing on. We had a list, I don't even know, 30 to 50 topics of possible ideas that we'll continue cycling through and writing more books about as we have ability to do so. So anyway, that was kind of our first task, was to come up with our list of various topics. And then, as Liz mentioned, we picked I love to shop, and shopping in a grocery store is our first topic. And this one we learned a lot through the process of, because it was the first one we did. So like anything that you're just starting, there are some learning curves and painful bumps along the way, but we got through it really, really well, we think. We really love it.
And honestly, it was a surprise to us. There are certain things we honed in on that we didn't even realize were going to be a benefit to our children. For instance, my son, and I think a lot of his peers, love repetition, they love lists, and they love rhythm. And this book has a lot of listing things, and they love like going over familiar places. Like for my son, going to the grocery store is kind of an event. And he likes to talk about, in his limited vocabulary, he's early conversational now at 11, but he likes to go over the things that we do. And this kind of repeats that. And I didn't realize when we were writing the book that was going to be an added bonus. So it's kind of neat.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah, and so as we were writing it, so our process really was for Liz to talk through the social story, if you will. And I took careful notes. We created a table with, the text in it for what we thought would fit on each page. We both went back and forth with that text multiple times. And then we tested it by kind of sharing the stories with Andrew and his friends. I talked with some of my behavior analysis colleagues who work with kids with autism to see what they thought of it. In fact, one of the ideas that ended up in all the books came from one of my colleagues, and that was to put a skills checklist in the back of each book. So each book has a checklist for parents, caregivers, teachers to go through with the kid to help them apply all of the skills that Andrew experiences and does in each story. So we'll show you a little bit more about what that looks like in a couple of minutes. And we also tested the reading level, because although at that time Andrew wasn't reading yet, we thought we wanted it to be something that kids who had the skill to read would be able to read. So we wanted to keep it at a pretty easy reading level. So we did all of that testing, and Liz already talked about the experiences. I don't know if there's anything more you want to add about kind of the story behind this and why we did it.
And honestly, I just want to add in the skills checklist. When I first looked at it, I was slightly intimidated, because when you look at it from a parent whose child is developmentally delayed or limited, you think, my kid can't do any of that. Like, why? And I actually called Barbara and I said, I don't feel like this skills checklist is going to work for Andrew even. Like, can we dumb it down? I'm sorry, shouldn't even use that word, but can we bring it down a little to a more developmentally delayed child? And we discussed that. And honestly, when you look at it, you can kind of pick at it and use the skills, and then you can build on it. And I didn't see that. Barbara obviously is trained in this.
Yeah, so absolutely. Some of the skills that you'll see in the checklist, and we'll show you a picture.
You'll think your kid can't do it.
Yeah, you might think that, but you could do it in a way that is appropriate for your child, or pick and choose. Each one has a page or two of various skills, so anywhere from maybe 4 to 10 different skills. So yeah, just pick what works for you.
It's an idea of a skill, and you can use that idea to go where meet your child where your child's at. And it just gives you an idea, because sometimes you don't know. Like for me, I'm in my head a lot when I'm with my son, because he's not very verbal. So it's not like we're having the give and take conversation. And so I go in my head, and this reminds me that I can talk about the skill even if he can't talk back to me about the skill.
Yeah, those are good examples for sure, Liz. So just kind of switching gears to talk a little more about our process, and then we'll talk about our other stories too. And actually, before I move on to this, Emily, are there any questions, comments, ideas in the chat?
We had a comment saying that they were excited that they're learning of social stories for the first time. So that's awesome.
Good.
And we had a question about that had actually kind of already been answered, but where they can buy these books. And I'm actually adding in a link where they can purchase the books. So we should.
Thank you. Yeah, some of them are on Amazon, and they're all on lulu.com, and there are a few that are available on Amazon. In fact, I think one of them might be running a sale right now. I should have looked that up before this call, but they're around $12 to $14 each. So just really quickly, kind of back to the process of writing this first book. So at the time that we started these, my daughter, Amelia, who's obviously Andrew's cousin, she was 10 years old, and she loves to draw, and she really wanted to be part of the process. And she loves her cousin. So she created the first set of images, which did take some time because she was 10 and she was drawing pictures for each page. But then we later handed them off to a professional artist to render the picture. So I'll show you. And this is an image that the artist drew of Amelia and Andrew at the time. So it's really cute. And so this is blurry. I apologize for that. But this was Amelia's drawing of Andrew. And then this is how the artist rendered the picture. And actually, this one is a really nice one to show, because Liz has been mentioning how the refrigerator and freezer sections were, or have been, Andrew's biggest challenge in the grocery store. So Anyway, that just kind of gives you a little image of our process in terms of getting the book to life and to finish it out. And so in each book, we also, I mentioned the skills checklist, we also have words to remember. So right before the skills checklist at the end of the book, we list words that are, important for the story and the social story, and maybe some that are a little more challenging. The doctor's book definitely has some more challenging words to remember, like stethoscope. This one, they're all pretty simple, like aisle, cash register, cashier. And then at the end of the page, we have my mom gives me a hug, or I get a hug when I remember these words, to emphasize the positive reinforcement for the child, remembering words and using words and expanding their vocabulary.
This is my son's favorite page. He loves to point to each thing and go over it again, and he giggles and he does it again. And yeah, this is definitely, he gets a big kick out of listing all the words.
It's cute. And then I mentioned the skills checklist. So this is what it looks like. And it really is, you can see the style is quite different from the rest of the book. This really is for the caregiver, teacher, parent to go through. And so for each skill, this is just the first couple from the shopping book that we've been talking about, our first one. So it lists the skill. So it just really kind of brings out that behavior or skill from the book. And then a suggestion for the adult. So for this one, it's to make a shopping list by either writing out the words or drawing pictures of the food. And then the adult can help by asking, what are we out of? Like, let's look in the refrigerator or cupboard and see what we don't have, or what foods do we like to buy and eat, and then work on that shopping list together. And then the second skill is dress to go to the store. And most of our stories have issues about dressing, and I'll let Liz, this is obviously a big thing with a lot of kids, but definitely Andrew, dressing appropriately for the situation is a big thing. So you might want to talk a little bit about that, Liz.
Well, one of our little kind of become a catchphrase in the book is time to put on my pants. And I think we're getting a little bit better at this now, but for a very long time, Andrew would typically not have some form of pants on. His dad's a pretty modest person, so we always worked on the underwear, but even that was not always successful. And I was probably a little more lenient on that than as a mom. I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but yeah, in usually getting ready for whatever activity the book covers, it says time to put on my pants, and your kids may get a kick out of that or relate to that. Because that's always been an issue for a lot of my friends and I.
Yeah, and Liz, you talked a little bit to me about, like, for the grocery store, that how he likes to sit in the back of the cart. It's important maybe for him to have shoes on or to have clothing that will be comfortable for him.
I dropped the ball on this one because my son is a floppy kid. He's very sensory. And so I kept it, and he's really slim. So I was lucky because he fit in shopping carts really late in life. I don't have a big, thick kid, and I took advantage of that. But unfortunately, I missed my window to get him adjusted to walking through grocery stores. So now that he's finally outgrown every shopping cart except for Target because they're huge, he sits in the back. But it's wiry and he's sensory. So, and I was a sensory kid, so I get that side of it. And so I always, even though we live in South Florida, so it's 100 degrees here, I have him wear sweatpants to the store so that he can, and let's face it, even Southern grocery stores are Arctic. So I have him wear his sweatpants. So putting on pants has more than one level, I guess, to getting ready to go places.
But just really quickly, some of the other skills, just to give you an idea for this particular book, are stay with your adult while you're in the store. And then the suggestion for the adult is to prompt by reminding the child to always stay with you. Finding the items on your shopping list. So that makes it a little more fun, right? For the child while shopping with you. Help the child look for signs in each aisle, compare the words or pictures on your list with what you're seeing in the store and on the signs, and see how many they can find for themselves with, as little help as possible. And again, depending on, to Liz's point earlier, your kid's skill and ability. It'll vary, but just do what you can with them to make it more fun and interesting. And another one is to have them help put items in the cart or basket. So if they're able to do that, have them help you put stuff in, prompt them to maybe put the more fragile items on top, like bread and eggs, help them with heavy items, things like that. Waiting patiently in line to pay. So a lot of our books and our social stories are about waiting in line or waiting at the doctor's office, waiting in various lines at the airport, things like that. So this one is,
and they also cover the sensation, like
the
crinkly paper at the doctor's office, or when you go into the grocery store and you get that burst of air, so that, because some of our kids really, they can't articulate those sensations, and they feel them much more. They just feel them much more. And what it could be, they can process it in a different way. Like maybe it's scary or startling to them, and we think it's a meltdown, but really they're just feeling something that maybe we just have always felt and don't think about.
Yeah, and if they read about it in the book and they see Andrew, so our page that has him walking into the store with the whoosh of air. So if you read about it with your child and talk about it and they see Andrew experiencing it, we hope that things like that will help them as well. So
I know when I cue into something like that and I bring it to Andrew's attention, I'll be like, oh, is that cold air freaking you out? Is that that's what's bothering you? Or, oh, is that refrigerator noise bothering you? He gets the biggest smile on his face, like, yes, she gets it. And maybe, and it's good to have, I don't know, tools like this that maybe sometimes will remind us of things that, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. That's exactly it. That's what we're trying to do here, kind of bring those things up.
Yeah, absolutely. And and then the last skill is really just helping put away the groceries once they get home. So if they're able to do that and help find where the groceries go in the refrigerator or cupboard or whatever, that's a good skill for them to help with as well. So moving on.
Barbara thought it was kind of funny because I always put the plastic stuff next to Andrew and like the raw chicken and stuff up on the baby seat away from him because he's a swisher. He likes to drum and swish on things. And I have learned through trial and error to put the hard stuff that he can drum on near him. And the raw chicken and maybe the berries, it'll go flying all over the grocery store somewhere else.
So just curious, and perhaps we should have launched the poll before we started talking about this story, but either way, we're curious if your child goes to the grocery store with you. So if you could answer the question, and then if any of you want to chime in the chat or take yourself off mute and tell us if any of the things that we've been talking about resonate with you, or if in any way you may find this helpful.
We've had a couple people chat in there saying that they have had similar challenges with clothing, and one parent letting us know that they also had an opposite problem, that they doesn't like shorts at all. So kind of different ends of challenges there.
Yeah, pants are an issue. There's a meme with the two guys from Supernatural, and they went out on stage for one of the award ceremonies with like a button-down shirt and no pants, kind of like the Risky Business with Tom Cruise, with just their tighty whities and the button-down shirt. My friend and I love that meme. We joked around it with our sons because neither of them wore pants.
Oh, yep. So everybody takes their child grocery shopping. I figured that was the case. I think all of us as parents end up having to take our children with us to the store. So anybody else have any comments or thoughts about what we've talked about? Any further questions or anything at all? And I'll show you. I don't know if this will show, but this is a page with Andrew putting on his pants.
And that picture looks so much like him. It still blows me away that artist did such a good job. He like read our brain.
So anything else, Emily? I don't know if you're seeing anything else because I can't see the chat right now. No. Okay.
Yeah, nope, not yet.
Okay. But just, like we said at the beginning, this really is a chat with us. So just ask away if you have any questions at all or anything you want to share. We'd love to hear from you. So this is a picture of Andrew reading the book. So Liz, you can kind of talk a little bit about his reactions to seeing himself as the main character in the book and kind of what he thinks about these stories. I know you've shared a little bit about it, but maybe talk a little more about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know how much he relates to himself in the book as much as he just relates to the scenarios. I don't know how much a sense of self he has in that way. I have pointed out, like, they got the crooked grin good, and they have the red highlights. They just, and I'll try to point that out. He will get a big smile about it. But he loves it. I love to shop one still, and he still loves to go over each aisle and what's in the aisle, and then sometimes I regret bringing it out because then we have to talk about each aisle for an hour, and then he wants to go to Target. But yeah, he likes it.
And I think this is a cute picture of him kind of cuddled up reading the book.
Yeah, and honestly, that wasn't the first time he saw it. The first time he saw it, he was just like tickled. This time was a couple years later. He was a little bit older, and we got a new shipment because a couple more people wanted some. And I was really, I don't know, I just thought it was really neat how he grabbed it and laid down with it. And at that point in time, he was really into the aisles and listing. He likes to go around the grocery store and like point out the produce and the deli, and he's obsessed with rotisserie. That's pretty much all he'll eat. So we have to go to the grocery store and get rotisserie like every other day because otherwise he won't eat. And he likes to point out each area, like the cakes. And
very cute. So we'll talk a little bit about our next book. So like we said, we've written 5 books.
The question that she said that do we have haircuts? And I wish we did, because right now I'm cutting Andrew's hair, and I'm going to have to start trying barbershops because eventually he's going to have to learn the skill of going to get his hair cut, because I'm not going to be cutting his hair for the rest of his life. So that's definitely on the list.
Yeah,
we'll just see how much actually the rest of the books take.
No, that's a great suggestion. Definitely haircuts, because I've talked to Liz a lot about that. And so moving on to airplanes, and I know Liz talked a little bit about why this was our second book, and really this was one of the ideas that prompted the books in the first place when our mother passed away and Liz had to travel from Florida to Michigan for the funeral. She really needed some help in terms of how to prepare for the airplane travel, what to do while on the plane. And it actually, and I don't mean to speak for you, Liz, but you can talk about this a little yourself. It actually ended up, from what I understand, being more smooth than she was afraid it would be. But this book goes into the story about Andrew getting ready to go on an airplane trip, going to the airport prior to the trip to learn about what he's going to experience when he's at the airport. And I think that some airports do have programs, don't quote me on this, but I've heard that some airports do have programs with the TSA that will take kids around to, just what it's like to put your suitcase in, to give your suitcase to them and to wait in line and to go through security, which I can imagine is frightening for a lot of children and adults as well. So in this story, he prepares to go on his trip. And then when it's the morning of the trip, he feels more comfortable and confident because he's already been to the airport. He kind of knows what to expect. And then we go into a lot of the different sights and sounds and experiences and waiting in long lines and staying with your adults. And of course, packing and bringing all of the things that you need on a trip to make it more pleasant and comfortable, like snacks and toys and books and things like that. And then once you get on the plane, what to experience, you're going to sit in a seat and your ears might pop at takeoff and landing and things like that. So that's really what the social story is about.
And I really like how it covers the things that we worry about as parents, like taking off your shoes and going through security. Even though our TSA Cares has a really good program where someone will meet you and walk with you through it, it still has to be done. It's not something that you can avoid. And just so your child, I know some people don't like the term kids, some people don't like the term. But anyway, just so your child knows that they are going to be taking off their shoes, even if they're not verbal and you aren't sure that they're grasping the concept, at least it's been introduced to them. And for me, my husband was a mess. Like, I pretty much am always with my son, so I know I can pretty much manipulate most situations and make him somehow go through it. And I don't really have that radar of what other people are thinking about me as much as my husband, but he really cares what the environment is around him. And it gave him a sense of control too, to have a social story to go through with Andrew on things, because then he feels like, all right, well, I covered this. Andrew has been introduced to this concept. So it's not just for your child, it's also for, if not you, your other half or your other travelers to know, because it's scary. You don't know what your kid's going to do. And lots of times you can't communicate with them enough to get feedback. So it helps. It does help. It helps everybody have a feeling of more control in the situation. And I do think our kids are more receptive than we realize in the long run. So there's that as well.
Yeah, so another question similar to the one we just asked, have you traveled on a plane with your child? So we're curious about, this group and how many of you have actually done what our story is about. And again, if you want to share any of your experiences in the chat or come off mute and talk to us about what you experienced and what might have been helpful to know ahead of time or to do differently to help others, that would be wonderful.
This one is one that's really grabbing a lot of the parents in my son's school. A lot of them are transplants to our area. We live in Florida, as I mentioned before, so it's a very transient community, not only from within our country, but out of our country as well. So the flying one has intrigued a lot more people than I anticipated even.
Okay, so 75% of you, so a lot of you have traveled with your child on an airplane. Has anyone, Emily, does anyone have any comments or questions or thoughts about that? No. Think I see any additional chats.
I don't see any additional. I think, Liz, you had mentioned somebody had asked about if haircuts were something that you'd be moving towards, which you already answered, but nothing new since then.
Okay, great. So the next one, and I'm just kind of going through in sequence how or when we wrote these books. So that's the order, no specifics, reason other than that. So the next one that we wrote was I Love to Have a Plan. And this one, we initially were going to title it something about canceled plans or changing plans, but that sounded really negative. So we spun it more positively to I Love to Have a Plan. And this one we wrote around the time that 2020 and COVID hit, where everyone's plans were changing, everyone's routines were changing. Also, and Liz can talk about this, some things in Andrew's life and world, in addition to COVID, were changing. So we thought that it would be really nice to have a story about helping children kind of plan things, for one, like write things on the calendar or look at a calendar where an adult has written things out so they know what to expect. And then also what to do when things change, how to find alternate activities that are just as fun and reinforcing maybe as the original plan and things like that. So Liz, maybe tell a little bit more about that. A little
deeper than some of the other ones. Some of the other ones just really cover the basics, which is important. This one kind of hits a more emotional note where Andrew experiences how when our kids are told that something's not going to happen, that's going to happen, the pushback of covering his ears and not wanting to be redirected. It covers that for maybe 2 pages. And maybe we should put a disclaimer on that, because I know some people don't want to cover that or remind their kids that happens. But I kind of I had mixed feelings at first, and I had to really wrap it in my brain before I thought about it. But in the long run, I think it's good. I think it's good for our kids to know that, to see another child that they can relate to have the same negative emotions that they do, and see that it's going to be okay at the end, and that Okay, so my son was in Young Olympics with Special Olympics, and he aged out. We did that every Saturday for a good 3 years, and then one Saturday came along, and all of a sudden he had aged out, and he was no longer in Young Olympics, and so he was going Saturday, and we didn't have that change, and we had that change of plans, and I had to get a hold of him, and of course you have like the anxiety build and stuff. So this book was a good reminder on how to handle that.
So just curious about whether those of you on this call write plans on the calendar or in some sort of a visible format. If you do any of these things that we're covering in this book already with your kids, and again, feel free to chat, chime in, make suggestions, help each other regarding changing plans or making plans or noting them down. Okay, so 50-50. About half of you are doing that. And I know some of you have younger kids on this call. A lot of you noted that your kids were between ages 3 and 5. So if your child's younger, you may not be doing that quite yet, but definitely something to kind of think about moving forward. You may want to start doing that in a very easy format. So in our book, see, I don't know if I can show you the page, but we give some suggestions for like a really simple way to mark things on a calendar so that they can kind of see it and it'll resonate with, with a younger child.
We did have a parent mention that they use a whiteboard on the weekends and had mentioned that the holiday season can definitely be a little tougher.
Yeah, because there's so many more plans.
Always hard for us. We actually have this really cute calendar by Melissa and Doug that has magnetic things, and it's very basic. Kind of, my son likes the simple songs for seasons and days of the week and things like that, and it kind of is basically that format. It says the season, and we get to choose. Like we did this one day during Christmas break, he hit that, hit the wall. And all of a sudden he wanted to go over what was going on. And because, the Christmas stuff and Santa and all that will bring him through that. But then you have that week between New Year's and Christmas where all of a sudden it hits them like a brick wall. And then we went over I pulled that out, the trusty Melissa and Doug calendar out, and we went over the season and what the holiday was and what it is now, what it's going to be. And it really does seem to calm him. But yeah, change of plans is hard. And I mean, maybe you could pull up this book too and just sit down and cuddle them up in a weighted blanket and get their squishy pillow and go over the book and show them that somebody else has trouble too.
And so then the next one, second to last book in our list of books that we've done so far is Visiting the Doctor. And I know this was kind of an early one that we had thought about, but it just took a little bit of time to get it written. And I think when we started writing it, or when we actually started putting pen to paper for it, Andrew had just recently been to the doctor, or maybe Ben, and I know Liz can attest to this, he goes a lot, right? He goes to the doctor quite often. And so this one is just really about, again, the sights and sounds of a doctor's visit. So it starts with him realizing that he's not feeling well and telling a parent that he's feeling sick, and then going and waiting again. Waiting is always a big part of the story. Waiting in the waiting room at the doctor's office, having toys that he can play with or snacks he can eat there, and then going into the doctor. And I think Liz already mentioned this too, the crinkly paper on the table or bed that you get on when you get there, having his ears and eyes and nose checked, and his heart and his blood pressure and all of that. And then when he's done, going out to the reception and getting his prescription. So that's a big word that we're teaching, and the words to remember and learn in this book. And then going to the pharmacy. So pharmacy, another big word, going there to pick up the prescription. So we go through the story of the whole process of going to the doctor. And I love some of our ideas in the skills checklist for this one. So we have some things like practice what happens at the doctor's office before you actually go. So particularly if your child's very young, start practicing that. Purchase a toy doctor's kit and go through the different things that might happen in the exam, like getting your heart checked with the stethoscope, and explain what's happening during that visit. And then visiting the doctor maybe when they're not sick, so that the child can learn about, kind of where it is and what it's like and what the smells are like in there and the sounds, and meet the doctor, the friendly face of the, doctor and the nurses and the different staff at the doctor's office.
For Andrew, the hardest part of the doctor's office is really relinquishing control, letting them look in his ears and letting them look in his nose and listen to his heart. And we had to work with him a lot on that. And he's still to the point where he has to guide them himself. He doesn't let them by free will go to his ear. He has to bring the thing, and then sometimes he'll chicken out and he'll get it closer and then chicken out. But this book is like really helpful in that way, because you can pull it out. You can remind him, because sometimes he'll go a couple times in a row and we'll feel like he's really getting it and that the anxiety maybe is going away. And then we'll have a summer where we have no flu, no issues, no need to go to the doctor, no well visits because school started, and then the whole concept will be lost. And we have to go through getting him back in the swing of things. And that's where a book like this is beneficial, because you can kind of read it a couple times and then all of a sudden he doesn't feel like it's been a year since he's been to the doctor. It feels familiar and the concepts feel familiar.
Yeah, and a couple other skills are following the doctors and nurses prompts. So it sounds like Andrew has his own prompts, but helping them understand that they may need to follow prompts and do what the doctor or nurse says. And then asking questions if they are verbal, or if they have verbal skills enough to ask questions. So ask those questions if they're scared or unsure about what's happening, and have a conversation with the doctor or nurse. So for the adult, the suggestion is to encourage them to do that, and to maybe prompt them while the parent is with the child at the doctor's office. So we can, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say, Liz, or if we're ready to move to the quiz about this one, or the poll about this one.
You can move on. Okay.
And again, any comments, questions, ideas about challenges that you've encountered at the doctor's office, if you think this would be helpful. And so that's our question, is if you've encountered challenges like we've just talked about in visits to the doctor's office.
We did get a comment from a parent, doctors aside, just asking, or more so stating that they would love to have a book for fine dining and attending parties as well.
Great.
And then another family mentioned that they had just gone to the dentist with their 5-year-old, that their son is always nervous, but after he leaves, he says that he loves the dentist. So they suggested taking a picture and a video after the visit this time to help remind him. So similar to what you had mentioned, Liz.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I would love a restaurant one too.
We'll have to do that. I know. We'll have to do that. Okay, so some of you always encounter issues. Some of you, it's just sometimes. So that's good and encouraging that you may be doing a lot of these things if you're, not even aware that you're following some of these suggestions and ideas from this story. So that's great.
Yeah, I have a unique situation where Andrew had a lot of anxiety, and I know not all of our kids have the same things. And with us, our big demons are sensory processing disorder and anxiety, more so than autism, really. And so I know our sensory kids and the anxiety that creates a social story is extremely helpful, because again, repetition and just introducing the thoughts so that when it does happen, it's not something that they haven't been introduced to before. And again, I know not all our kids have anxiety. Not all of our kids are sensory, but it does, I think, help to not just introduce something without preparing. And that's where the books come in. They're just a preparation, another tool to help our kids feel more confident in a world that maybe they're not so confident in.
And last but not least, I love to brush my teeth. I would say this is probably our most popular book. This one and the doctor visit book are probably our two most popular books. And this one really does hone in on the skill of brushing
Really good.
teeth. Yeah, and it goes into a lot of maybe more advanced skills such as flossing and things like that, in addition to brushing and doing it twice a day for 2 minutes, setting a timer if you need to. But we do know that not every kid is able to brush their teeth yet, but just kind of baby steps along the way to learning to brush their own teeth. And so, yeah, again, this one has a lot of really good, I think, ideas for getting to that ultimate skill that we hope that they'll get to.
And I love this type of books because Andrew and I most of the time hand over hand still. He can do it, but he's kind of the quick 1, 2, 3 and done. And of course, I have to micromanage. But when we read a book like this, I find often because we read it and introduced the concept, he will do a lot more effort for what he's capable of and what any of our kids are capable of. Kids I know aren't all that detail oriented when it comes to brushing their teeth like we would like them to be, but it definitely seems to motivate him.
Yep, and I love the picture on this with him missing, because he was missing one of his front teeth around this time, so he's got his little gap in his teeth. Or I think both teeth, yeah.
Even now at 11, I never knew 11-year-olds lost so many teeth.
Yeah, he's probably at the end. But, yeah. So another poll question: how competent is your child brushing their own teeth? So I will say that we were chatting about this prior to this this session, and I have a 13-year-old daughter, Amelia, who drew the pictures when she was younger, and she still doesn't love to brush her teeth. And it's still kind of a struggle to get her to do it regularly. She'd be really embarrassed if she was here listening to me say that, but it's true.
And I know for me, when I was little, I loved brushing my teeth. It was kind of weird. I think Andrew does like the togetherness of brushing. He pretty much likes, I think I'll still be dressing him at 21. Not that he can't, not that he's not capable. He's just kind of like, peasant, put the shirt on me. Peasant, put the pants on me. I brush my teeth. I think he's just one of those kids. And I don't think it has anything to do with any of his struggles. I think he just really likes things for him. They always joke in each classroom he's in that he's a future CEO because he really likes to make the environment work for him.
So yeah, it looks like most are still learning, so that's good. They've started the skill, and maybe a book like this book and social stories like this could help them, kind of bridge the gap and get there. There's a few that are very competent at it, so that's great too. So it's really good. And I know we only have about 5 minutes left, so we're actually at our last slide before Q&A. So, and I know a lot of you have been giving suggestions, so we love it. We got fine dining and parties, haircuts, things like that already. And I'm jotting them down because you're our audience. We want to write books that appeal to people and then what people are looking for. So you can either come off, if you want to come off mute and tell us, books that you'd like to see and topics that you'd like to see, or go ahead and chat in some more ideas that you have that you may have thought of previously or that have kind of come to mind as we've been talking. And Emily, you can let us know if anybody's put anything in there.
Sure thing. All right, I got a couple. So we have swim class or attending any new hobby or summer class, and weather appropriate clothing / change of seasons. These are some really awesome topics.
I do not envy the change of seasons. I'm really lucky because we live in the South and we literally have like a week of 40-degree weather here and there. But I've thought about that with like mittens and snow pants and boots, and I can't even imagine. I mean, you never know. My kid could be great at it, and I just have never had to deal with it, but I can imagine it's a struggle for a lot of children.
Yeah, the same parent mentioned that it's a struggle every time. So
Like I had mentioned before, I was a sensory kid, and I know that I even struggled sometimes with like chewing on my hat or my cuff and like it freezing, and yeah, I can't imagine.
So
My
we can
heart.
move on to our very last slide is, just any questions or discussion. And again, we only have a couple minutes left, but we'd love to keep hearing from you in terms of more ideas on topics, or if there are any questions that came up that you didn't already ask as we were talking.
Hey, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, yeah. So just regarding the books itself physically, are they any more durable than standard books? Because right now, my son, who's approaching 4, he's kind of got into a phase where he likes tearing the pages.
They're not super durable. We did make it like a shiny. They're paperbacks. We've thought about creating a more hardcover, maybe board book style. We have not done that yet.
In my heart, they were going to be board books because Andrew still rips his books. But
about how many pages is the average book?
I think it's around 20 pages. Yeah,
okay, so yeah, that would probably be kind of hard to do, like the thicker, the cardboard pages, I guess, because then I guess the books would get pretty big.
It might be kind of big, yeah. But yeah, right now.
I mean, when we read to him, it's fine. But a lot of times he likes to actually just take his books with him into his bed, and he kind of falls asleep to them, and then he'll wake up in the morning, and he's gotten to this thing where he just kind of like starts tearing the pages out. So I was just wondering about it.
Yeah, that's
I would just have to know that we
yeah.
probably can't leave him alone with the books. So
yeah, that's a really appropriate and great question, and definitely something we've considered, and we may look for new formats too. So we just haven't done that yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I had a couple parents just mention when it came to the clothing conversation, just that long sleeves, short sleeves, pants, shorts are difficult. And a parent had mentioned that daylight saving time changes is going away this year. And so hopefully that will make things a little easier. And the request—
honestly, it won't be for my kid. My kid literally changes at the time, like maybe a week before daylight saving time. I know it's going to happen because he changes internally. He must have like the best circadian rhythm ever.
It looks here too that there was a request here, or a question of, can you make board books, which you did already respond to. And a parent just said, thank you so much, that this was amazing and they can't wait to check them out.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Anything else before we close? And again, we only have a minute or two left, but we want to make sure that we answer all your questions and hear all your thoughts.
Yeah, that change of plans one could cover a bunch of things, because even going to a party versus staying home and doing their nighttime routine, you could pull it out and say, okay, today we're going to Jenny's house because it's her brother Joey's birthday, and so we're not going to be at home to eat your Cheerios at 3. We're going to be at Jenny's house, and maybe we could bring your Cheerios along, and and think of an idea and kind of read the book and talk about, like, in the book, how they replaced the change and redirected, and talk to your child then about maybe what a redirection that would work for them, and bring them into the change.
And Barbara or Liz, before we say goodbye, do you mind flipping to that next slide for me?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So for all of our families here, thank you so much for attending this evening. Thank you, Barbara and Liz, so much for taking the time to talk with us about Andrew's World and these incredible resources that hopefully more families have access to. Next month on February 14th at same time, same place, 5 p.m. Please look to register for that one. We are talking about summer programming. We're hoping to give you some information about the benefits of having your kiddo attend a summer program and what, something that Verbal Beginnings offers from our social skills programming in terms of the summer as well. So we'll be able to give you some information about that next month. We did have a question about when the recording will be shared. We will be hopefully sending that out within the next day or so. So keep an eye out for that. But again, thank you, Liz. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you to all the families. This was incredible. And I can't thank you enough. So thank you. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.